Great. I'm just going to check participants quickly. All right, I don't see everyone that I expected to see, but I want to be mindful of our time together. So we'll start in just a minute or two. And in chat, I'm going to push a link to our curriculum overview, which you can just check out as you want to remind yourselves of what will take place during day 1 and days 2, 3, and 4 as well. Oops. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. So some of you may be wondering, what is a sprint? We'll talk a bit about that briefly. But first, I want to express my genuine appreciation and enthusiasm for the ability to work with colleagues, many of whom are a part of the call this morning, to make an event like this possible. We've put a lot of brainstorming and review work into creating this pilot opportunity to determine what if we carved out some time and we focused on some very fundamental and helpful, useful aspects of what we know, and really what some of the experts who will be teaching later this week know about GIS, and put those to use as we learn together and after the sprint. I want to be sure that I call out some of the individuals that were fundamental to making this possible. And I will do that and share my screen in a moment so that you can see who the other participants are today and hopefully throughout the rest of the week. The reason we're doing this now is that some of us on the mentoring subcommittee for the TDL GIS interest group, we're finding that individuals that were part of the interest group expressed an interest in coming together as co-learners or having a mentor, so that as they had an opportunity to explore things they wanted to learn for themselves, they can do that. And while that was helpful and it worked, there were some challenges there. A lack of time, distractions from other priorities, and then the frustration of making headway for a brief period of time and then falling away from it and having to start over when more time was found. So we came together to plan what's known as a sprint in the Agile methodology for development purposes, IT development, so that we could focus in a very time-boxed way on a certain number of curricular events and lessons, and try to make sense of that in our own independent way, using the stand-up meetings in the morning. That's a part of a sprint, to work on, in this case, a project is an overview or almost like a boot camp review of some fundamental GIS aspects. But in the workplace, you have a stand-up meeting, you're working on a particular project, individuals divide the labor and then come together as needed for short periods of time just to revisit and discuss, where are we on track, what questions are there, so that we can continue the sprint. The end goal of which, of course, is to have a project that is the best it can be within that time-boxed window of time, and drawing on the expertise and the experience of all of the people who were a part of the team, the group. In Agile terms, that's the squad. And the squad that we work most frequently with at UT is the Squid Storm squad. So get to have a little fun with that sometimes. The other aspect of what we wanted to do as a mentoring subcommittee was grow a culture of community, connect people with each other in a deep and meaningful way so that they're more predisposed to remember, oh, I know who can help me with that. Or I want to work with that person again. I'm going to reach out and we're going to learn together. Maybe we'll do a workshop. Maybe we'll work on a different project. But then we'll have a level of familiarity and comfort that comes with a growing sense of community. This sprint pilot will also allow us to learn about the approach. Did this work? Was it a good idea to come together every morning, have a lesson, go away, do some hands-on learning independently, and then regroup for that kind of stand-up meeting discussion session in the afternoon before we go on to the next day and learn something new? So it'll enable us to learn and grow. And that is part of the idea. What future events can be informed by what we learned this week. Here are our participants. And I thought we would just briefly, if you're on the call, can we go in alphabetical order and introduce ourselves? Josh, would you start us off?
I will. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Bin. I think I know most of you here, and I'm the Director of Data and Digital Scholarship here at Baylor. And we are really trying to launch forward with our GIS efforts in our library starting now. So this is perfect timing for us.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Carter, and again, I think I know most of everybody here in the call. I'm a research and instruction librarian at University of Houston Clear Lake and a GIS liaison librarian. So it's part of the reason why I've been wanting to get involved with this project. So I'm really excited, and thank you all for putting this together. I'm really excited for this week.
I'm just gonna insert here that Christina has been a stalwart supporter and participant in the planning process. The planning group got an email on Friday afternoon from Christina saying that she wouldn't be able to join us for the sprint after all. There's been a family emergency that is taking her away this week. So our thoughts are with her, but she's not going to be able to be here. And Leah, she registered. Many of you, I'm sure, know Leah and have worked maybe with her in other ways previously. She registered. I'm not sure she's going to be able to join us this week. Leah, are you on the call today? Let me look to see.
She's actually on vacation, and I don't think she realized that the two overlapped.
Okay.
But she will definitely be taking a look at the recording.
Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, well, Jennifer Flaxbart was here in multiple forums here earlier. I'm Jennifer. I am at the UT libraries at the University of Texas at Austin. And I've mentioned that, I'm a part of the mentoring subcommittee for the TDL GIS interest group. At UT, I am an assistant director in the academic engagement department, and I work with a number of teams in my department, primarily comprised of subject specialist liaisons. And our department name is the Research Support and Digital Initiatives Department. So I've had the pleasure of working with Michael in different ways. Our organizational structure sometimes shifts, not always in expected ways, but it's a pleasure to be here. And I just want to say I have really appreciated getting to know some of you over the course of our planning process. So thank you. And is Angela on the call? No. Cynthia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cynthia Henry, and I am at Texas Tech University, and I'm a subject liaison there for the College of Human Sciences, and just really wanted to get involved learning a little bit more about GIS, and so that's why I'm here.
Alexa?
Hi there, my name is Alexa Height. I am the Scholarly Communication Librarian at TAMU-CC, and I am also a liaison to the College of Science and Engineering, specifically our GIS program. So I, like many librarians, I don't have a background in the sciences. So I'm kind of here to get that overview introduction to GIS. So thank you for putting this together.
Sylvia.
I'm Sylvia Jones. I am the Science and Engineering Librarian at SMU, and I help coordinate the GIS program at our campus. I more or less work on the day-to-day issues related to the digital initiative, the initiative for spatial literacy that we have at SMU. And I'm here, happy to be here.
Awesome. Is Anne on the call? How about Anna? Tom?
Hi, all. Tom Rorig. I'm a personal librarian at Texas Tech, along with Cynthia. I'm also one of the federal regional Texas librarians and the patents and documents person here at Texas Tech. Looking forward to learning much more about GIS. Thank you all.
Michael.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Shensky. I'm the GIS and Geospatial Data Coordinator at the UT Libraries, the University of Texas at Austin, where I work with Jennifer. I've been in that role for about 3 years, developing GIS services and resources for the campus community, and I'm also the current chair for the TDL GIS interest group. Nice to see you all this morning.
Sinead?
Hi, I'm Sinai Wood, Associate Professor and Documents Librarian at Baylor, and I look forward to learning more about the databases and the software programs.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. So here's the planning group. I mentioned that I would come back to this. These individuals have been amazing. You know, when the mentoring subcommittee proposed this idea now a couple of months ago, it was just a figment really of our imagination. And for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, we thought maybe we could make something work, and the summer would be a good time to make it happen. I'm thrilled that all of you were able to carve this time out and spend the 4-day week with us to learn more. I just want to give a huge shout out again. And I can't express how thrilled I am that we're able to move forward with this and put it to test. The individuals who have globes next to their names are the people who were a part of our small but mighty mentoring subcommittee. The others have really been full participants and are taking on so many aspects of making the work and fun. It seems fun, frankly, but it's hard work. And I think we'll see evidence of that. So again, thank you all for being a part of today, and especially to our planning group. Just a few logistics, and then we'll get started. We're using Zoom, and I think that we've already learned that maybe the calendared Zoom invitation is the best way to connect to the Zoom session, but we're using that same link throughout the week. So just come back to that same link in the afternoon, and hopefully that'll continue to work well for us. Alex is with us. If there are any stumbling blocks with regard to access of functionality, she can correct that for us. We are supposed to be recording. And so I want to make sure that we start the recording at least with the first instruction session, so that we have that link to share later. And we won't record those afternoon discussion sessions. That is an opportunity to come back at the end of the day, talk a little bit about what you experienced as you completed the hands-on activities aspect of the sprint, and then get situated for the next day. The Slack channel is for communication between our times together. So you can ask questions, share what your thoughts are about your activities. Don't hesitate to use Slack to communicate. It's casual, and that way we all get to learn at the same time. If someone asks a question that you were also going to ask. It can be really helpful in that regard. We're using Google Docs, and that is really the way that we are documenting and then sharing information throughout the sprint. We're also going to ask you to fill out a brief survey at the end of each day. That's part of the assessment practice that I wanted to put into place so that we can make any adjustments as we go from day to day, and so that we can learn about how this method or approach works overall, to see what applications we can draw from this later on. Does anyone have any questions at this point? All right. That's what I wanted to cover. And I think we're ready to proceed with day one, the curriculum. Thanks, everyone.
All right. So Jennifer, should I start sharing now for the, all right. Okay, well, hello again, everyone. Introduced myself a moment ago. I'm Joshua Bin, and what we're going to do here today is explore a handful of library databases that have some GIS and or mapping support, just to get the blood flowing, the juices flowing, before Michael takes it away with ArcGIS Online in a moment. The four databases that we will discuss are Reference Solutions, which used to be called, and I still want to call it, Reference USA, PolicyMap, Social Explorer, and Simply Analytics. While I will be demonstrating each of these four databases, we will spend a little bit more time on Simply Analytics, as it was the database that most of us reported that we have access to. You can follow along if you have access to a particular database, or simply watch the demonstration for now. This PowerPoint presentation, which is included as a Google presentation in the shared Google Drive, is also available in that drive. I'm just using the PowerPoint here. So what categories of researcher needs or questions can be solved using databases like these? First, on the left, gathering and visualizing social science data, which does include public health. The categories of data include government data, such as from the census, also commercially created data, such as from marketing research firms. Data sources can also include point locations, such as businesses, schools, and libraries. Second, on the right, what functionality is provided so that we can actually do something with the data? We can perform geographic analysis, such as site selection. We can develop and share interactive maps, and can even upload our own point locations to integrate into these tools. We are going to take a look at each database live in a moment. First, I want to highlight the strengths of each of the four databases as regarding GIS and mapping. Social Explorer focuses on government data, not 100% government data, but that's the focus. It is the only database here that provides the ability to compare two variables in an interactive map with side-by-side or slider capabilities. Really cool. Reference Solutions is the absolute best solution for researchers wanting to access and map data at specific locations. Business data by locations, consumer data by household, medical health data. It's really amazing. The final two on the right, Simply Analytics and PolicyMap, are the two databases that have the largest amount of social science and public health data, as they contain both government data as well as commercially available data. Their data holdings are different, however, so it is really awesome if your library does have access to both. Additionally, their analysis capabilities are different. Last thing I want to point out here is that only Social Explorer and PolicyMap allow researchers to upload their own point data, such as addresses or latitude, longitude coordinates, onto their platform. So only Social Explorer and PolicyMap can you upload, and you are not able to upload demographics, polygons, lines. You simply can upload a table of addresses or XY coordinates. So we're going to take a look at Social Explorer first. I didn't want any of my connections to time out, so I have those links that you saw ready to go. If you have access to your own institution, you can go ahead and launch Social Explorer. Otherwise, no problem. Just watch my screen as I show some highlights. If you or your researchers are wanting to download data as Excel tables, from this front window, you would simply click Tables. For now, I will look to create maps. So I'm going to select the Explore button right here for United States. Not going to watch the tour during this workshop. The default brings us to population density per square mile by state. So now let's suppose that a researcher wants to explore the relationship between income and educational attainment. Is the perfect example or reason to create a swipe map. Under Compare, which is right up here, I'm going to use the drop down and I'm going to select a swipe map. And that is going to give us data on the left and data on the right. And when we drag this slider, it's going to show us from the left and the right and give us a really nice way to visually compare. Right now, the data is identical. On the left, it's population per square mile by state, and on the right is the same. So when we use the slider, nothing happens. I'm going to go ahead and zoom into Texas. And there we are. On the left here, I'm going to go ahead and click Change Data. And we can see all of the categories of data that are available through Social Explorer. I'm going to adjust the data to income. So I'm going to click income as the category. And then I'm going to scroll down. I'm not interested in seeing frequency distributions. I want the median household income, which is right here. So median household income in 2019 inflation adjusted dollars. And now I see income. Then I can adjust. State is so large. I want it to be smaller pieces, more granular. And you can see we have various geographies. And this basically goes down. State, smaller than a state is a county. Census tract and census block group is the smallest geography that we can go with this type of data. I'm going to select census tract. And we can see just how granular this gets, where we can zoom in. And if I were to zoom into the Metroplex, now we can see by census tract the high and low income in 2019 inflation adjusted dollars. Perhaps now, now that we're zoomed in, we're going to change on the right to education. So I'm going to select change data. And I'm going to change this to education. And then I'm going to scroll down to select bachelor's degree or more. Now these colors are the same, that yellow to red. I think it may be a good idea to adjust the education data perhaps to blue. And here we are. So we can zoom in as close as we want. And now as I scroll to the left, all of the blue is showing the distribution of the percent of over 25 population with a bachelor's degree or higher. And on the left, I can see the income. So this is a really great way, and you saw how quickly we generated this, to create this side-by-side slider functionality. What we then can do is click on the share button and copying that link, we would even be able to send that link to a researcher. So if we get a reference question via email, I can send them that link. And if I go ahead and paste this in, you'll see it's just going to take the user exactly where I had left off. Everything, zoom level, the slider, what I had on the left, right, the colors, and everything. So of course I can go on for much more, but that is Social Explorer. And what I really wanted to focus on was just how easy and quickly you can create these side-by-side sliders with their enormous library of data. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at reference solutions, which if you're more familiar with the term Reference USA, it's even giving us this pop-up. If you haven't been to this database recently, it has to tell you that you are in the right place, that this is Reference USA rebranded to Reference Solutions. So recall that Reference Solutions is the business location and household location data set. This is the data set that I would go to, that I would recommend that you go to if you have researchers asking about individual point locations, whether they're household information or business information. So when would Reference Solutions be the solution to a GIS or mapping research request? When someone wants to map all of fill in the blank type of business in a geographic location, or when they want to map all of the households who, through purchases or filling out online forms, have expressed an interest and have been tagged by marketing research firms to a particular lifestyle or interest. Let's take a gander at both of these options. First, I'm going to click US businesses. And then I'm going to click the advanced search. Maybe I'll make this a little bit bigger. Always advanced search. If I want, for example, all of the public libraries in Texas, first I can select the keyword SIC NAICS from the list of searchable fields on the left. And then I can just run a search for library and click search. And what it's going to do is it gives me, I'm searching SIC codes. So it's giving me the codes, and I can see that 823106 is libraries public. So I can select that. I can click this update count, and I can see that there are 22,400 public libraries in Reference Solutions database. To filter for Texas, all I have to do is select the geography, city, and state on the left. And I search for Texas, and I want the state. And I can click update count, and I can see that there are 1,186 public libraries in their database in Texas. I'm going to click view results. And here is my list. I can download in chunks of 250 records by selecting them and then clicking the download button. We can add the latitude and longitude coordinates. They're everything in Reference Solutions database is already geocoded, meaning it already has the latitude and longitude in the data. So when we would download, we can select to make certain that we are downloading with those coordinates. With X and Y coordinates, it's super easy to map the locations using ArcGIS Online, which Michael and Sylvia are going to be showing later today and all of tomorrow morning. Additionally, Social Explorer and PolicyMap, like I said earlier, do have the ability to add point locations, even if they're downloaded from Reference Solutions. So we could download points from Reference Solutions, especially if it doesn't need the XY coordinates, but even easier, if you have the XY coordinates, upload them into either Social Explorer, which we just looked at, or PolicyMap, and you'll be able to integrate Reference Solutions data with their platforms. There is a heat map button right here that I'm going to hesitate, and maybe I'll click. I'll see what happens. Most of the time, this heat map does not work well. Hey, look at that. It actually did work well. Fantastic. So I take that back. We can click the heat map, and we can look at an interactive Google map here that shows the hotspots. In this example, I just searched for public libraries, but you can search for anything that you'd like, and you can filter location right now. So it's just showing the hotspots for where there's lots of public libraries, of course, in the cities. Makes perfect sense. If you're looking at more business than a library, you can look at the heat map by sales volume or by number of employees. If you click on that heat map link and it doesn't, I got lucky for this workshop, for this sprint here, but if you click it and it doesn't work, we actually have a help desk ticket in with, maybe they fixed it, in with Reference Solutions to get that fixed. Let's shift back to the homepage for Reference Solutions, because I really want to point out this US consumers and lifestyle data. It is a unique resource in most of what most academic libraries would have access to. Once again, in the US consumers lifestyle database, advanced, always click advanced. So instead of searching business listings, now we're in lifestyle data by household. There's no summarized demographic data in Reference Solutions. It's all on an individual site location. I'm going to go ahead and check lifestyles here. And let's suppose we want to identify specific households, names, addresses, personal information that have been tagged by marketing research firms with an interest in football. I'm going to limit that to the area surrounding Baylor University, but if you're following along, you can type in any address you want. So the first thing I'm going to do is under sports, these are the lifestyles here. I'm going to expand sports and I'm going to select football. Now that that is done, I can click update count just like with the business, and we can see that there are 7.1 million individuals in the United States who on marketing research lists have been tagged with an interest in football based on purchases, entering sweepstakes, however you would generate such a tag for yourself. Then instead of selecting city state, I can do that, but I want to show this radius search. So if I select radius, and we can go ahead and enter an address here. I'm going to enter the address for Baylor University, which is 1311 South 5th Street, and that's all it wants here. Then we put the zip code. For me, you can put any address you would like. I'm going to put 76706, and I'm going to specify within a 5-mile radius around that address. I can click update count, and I can see that there are 1,612 people who have been tagged. Of course, there's more than that much, but these are the people who are going to get those cold calls and mailings. So if I click view result, here they are. How big brother is that, right? We can randomly click somebody and you'll get all sorts of information about them, but we're not here to be big brother. What we can do, we can click heat map, and let's see if that'll actually work. Guess I have to. When I was developing the structure of the content, it's not working now. But we can also, if I go back, we can click download, and we can download this data as Excel, CSV. We can specify exactly which fields. We can make certain that we include the latitude, the longitude, which are available fields, and just download all that data so that we can upload it, for example, to ArcGIS Online that Michael and Sylvia are going to be showing us, or even in Excel, we can start generating some maps. So that is Reference USA, the most big brothery database that I have used in an academic librarian setting. Sorry, Reference Solutions. Let's go ahead and switch now to PolicyMap. Now, the strength of PolicyMap are the variety of its data sources and the very cool 3-layer map analysis functionality. Perusing through the categories, we can see that if I select demographics, we can see the various types of data that's here, from population, race, all the way down to migration and homelessness. Under income and spending, we can get income data, poverty, federal tax return data. You can see this is branching far beyond what's available in the US Census. Home sales data, which is fairly valuable, seeing as MLS data is pretty tightly contained within Texas. Lending data, quality of life, which includes crime and computer and internet access, economy, education, health, it goes on and on. So what we're going to do is let's go in and let's make a map first, right? So let's say that we wanted the total population, and you can see it generates a map similar in functionality to what we saw in Social Explorer. But the real benefit, what I really like about PolicyMap, is their 3-layer maps. What this allows us to do is to build up to 3 filters for a site selection exercise. So let it suppose that we want to identify areas that would be a good potential site for an upscale coffee shop in Austin. This is where the 3-layer maps come in. So first thing we want to do is to zoom to Austin. And get us in there pretty, let me zoom in maybe one more, that looks good. So what criteria are we going to implement for an upscale coffee shop? Perhaps high income, high education, and making certain that 4G data access was available. So what I'm going to do first, you can see there's 1, 2, and 3 data layers here. I'm going to do the income first, and I'm going to set income has to be at least 150,000. So I select income. I want household, all households. I'm not segregating by race or tenure, which means own or rent. Just want all households. And what it does is it's showing me now the areas in purple as it shows down here. The purple areas are the areas that meet all of my criteria because I haven't specified criteria yet. You can see that the range of income goes from 2,500 to 250,000. I'm going to change this to 150,000. Because we are wanting to do a fairly upscale area. So there we are. So we've got that. We can see areas now. All of these areas have already been excluded, and now we can see the areas that are included. Next, I'm going to go to education, and I'm going to specify that I want educational attainment to be at least a bachelor's degree. And the percent in each area has to be 75%. And we probably have more areas that have been filtered away. For the very last item that I want to do is I want to specify that wireless broadband 4G access must be 100% coverage in the area. So I'm going to go to quality of life, broadband internet availability, speed and technology, and there is the 4G area coverage. And I'm going to specify that this has to be 100%. I want complete coverage. Now for this layer, because PolicyMap is simply the vendor, not the data creator, their contract with this data must prohibit them from allowing us to zoom this that's so far out. You can see the arrow on the right, how close we have to get for that to work. So I just need to click. There we go. That seemed to do it. So what we're left with here, I can't zoom out anymore, unfortunately, because of the 4G data. But what we're left with are the areas in Austin that met our 3 criteria. Unfortunately, it is called 3-layer maps. You cannot add a 4th, 5th, 6th criteria, but it's amazing how quickly and easily you can do some site selection like this directly through PolicyMap. And again, there is a share button on the top right where you can go ahead and share someone that URL, and they'll launch exactly where you left off. It's a really great way to respond to email reference inquiries that maybe don't require a more robust GIS solution. All right, finally, let's take a look at Simply Analytics. I'm going to click sign in as a guest. You see already that it recognizes from my IP that I am logged into the Baylor University Simply Analytics account. But each user to Simply Analytics, if they want to save all their work so they can log in again and recover right where they left off, they can create an account. And I do indeed have an account, but I don't want to log in and have you see everything I've been working on. I want to log in and have a blank, empty canvas to play with. You can download and save all your work, but as soon as you shut down that browser, or if you get timed out, you'd have to restart the research from scratch. So I'm going to sign in as a guest. It's going to ask us to take a tour. And of course, we're not going to take a tour right now while we're Zooming. And here's the tour. All right. So we did the Metroplex and we did Austin earlier. Let's create a project focusing on Harris County, which includes Houston. So for this new project, I'm going to type Harris County. And sure enough, there's also a Harris County in Georgia. So I'm going to make certain I select the one in Texas. Now, what they have just a dozen or more these seed variables. I don't want it to automatically add some content. So I'm going to click create the project without any seed variables. Now, what are Simply Analytics strengths? Data, 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 and more data, more than any of the others. You may be asking, well, how about PolicyMap? Absolutely, so much more data available on a wider variety of topics, all the way down to very small geographies. They can all be mapped down to the census block group, which is smaller than Census Tracts. What we're looking at here are 11 functions that can be run using the data in SimplyMap. We're of course not going to run this used to be called SimplyMap. I apologize. I keep using old names. Simply Analytics. The highlights regarding mapping are the standard map, which is right here on the top left. That can be used to map a single variable like we saw in PolicyMap and Social Explorer. The ranking table, which is on the top right, which can be used to generate data to download, and the ring study table that is going to provide summary statistics within a 1, 3, and 5 mile radius around a location. So let's first create a standard map. So if you're following along, click create, and I'm going to click create. Now we use PolicyMap's 3-layer tool to identify locations for a new coffee shop. So let's focus on my favorite food now, pizza. We're going to try and find locations to open a new pizzeria in the Houston area, limited to Harris County. So first we're going to select our variables. Let's map the frequency that households eat out or order in pizza. Do any of the other databases have such granular data? They sure do not. So our data categories are here on the left. I'm going to click on consumer behavior. And there is this scroll bar is going to expand as we hit the bottom. There's as you can see, there's a enormous amount of data here. So what we can do is look under category. Here we go, food and beverage. So I'm going to filter this for food and beverage. And we can see this, what they have are consumer expenditure estimates, food, household average expenses on food, cereals, flour, right? It just goes on and on. So this is not sales data. This is where the people live, how much money the average household in the area spends on these products and services. If we scroll down enough, sure enough, we're going to get to pizza, but it just is going to go on and on. I went through that just so you can see how much data there is. Mutton, how much data there is just for the consumer expenditure. The best way is not browsing just because there's so much data. Under data search, I'm going to search for pizza. And we can just do a global search across everything. So what I'm going to look for is I can see the how many times households visited California Pizza Kitchen, CC's Pizza. Look how granular this gets. But if I scroll down just a little bit, here we are. So this is from the MRI Consumer Survey, fast food and drive-in restaurants bought in the last 6 months, food type. They have the raw count and then the percent. I'm going to grab the percent of households in whatever geography we specify bought in the last 6 months pizza or pasta. So I'm going to click it and I'm going to hit this X on the top right here. So now I've got Harris County. I've got the variable I want, and I'm going to click done. And what we see are the percent per zip code. I can see up here, it's giving me the variable in Harris County by zip code. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this from zip code to census tracts. Right now, the colors that we can see in these breakpoints, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, and we see what each color represents here on the right. These represent national quantiles. Quantiles break numeric data up by fitting the same number of items in each group. So if there's 100 items and 10 breakpoints or 10 colors, each color will contain 10 census tracts. This works well, but as we are focusing on the Houston area, perhaps it would be better to only include the tracts in this area instead of national tracts. We can edit that by clicking edit in the legend, and where it shows quantiles national, we can change that to quantiles local. They also have natural breaks and equal intervals, but let's stick with their default quantiles local. And we should see a lot more variation now because it's only considering the range of values within Harris County. So if this is what the researcher wanted, a map just like this, they'd be able to go to export and allow them to export a really nicely stylized map image with a title. They can specify where the focus should be. It gives them the legend. They can add a text label down here if they want to put a title or any other information, and they can email it or save it directly to their computer. It's a really nice way to create a map quickly. If a researcher wants to use this data in software or ArcGIS online that can read GIS shapefiles, this is the only database that does download GIS shapefiles. Under View Actions, we can select Export Shapefiles, and it's going to give us all of the census tracts in Harris County. We could add multiple attributes or variables, but we've only have one selected so far. You type in an email, you click send, and you get a shapefile with the data already built in. Very user-friendly. In addition to consumer demand for pizza, a proper site selection study should include competitors as well. So on the left, if we click businesses and search for pizza and hit enter, how about that? Nothing to it, right? Look at that. So what we've got now is our bubbles that represent the number of pizzerias in a location. If we zoom in, it will start splitting the bubbles as we get closer and closer. And if we mouse over, there we go. I guess we have to click, get back to list. I can see the 4 pizzerias that are in that bubble that I just clicked. Next, let's create a ranking table, which allows researchers, and you know what? Let's skip the ranking table just because I see that I'm pushing 10 o'clock. So what I'm going to do instead of the ranking table is we're going to add an additional data here. What we can do is select data And in addition to the, right now, the data that we have on here is the percent of households that ate out at any pizzeria or brought in the last 6 months. Perhaps we can try to also identify people who watch college football on the weekends. Perhaps they may order a lot of pizza. So if I go into data and I search for football, I can go ahead and I'm looking for the weekend, or this one looks good. So let's see. Yeah, see, this is what I get for changing the order. Let's go ahead and look at percent media watch, TV show types, football, bowl games, specials. We want to identify those people. So I added that, and the map is now going to update to show me that content. But what's great now is similar to the functionality that we saw in the 3-layer tool within PolicyMap, we can do similar functionality as a filter, and we are not limited to 3. So this is great. You could add 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many filters you would like. And we have 2 variables here. So what I can say, for example, is I want the percent fast food that may be greater than, let's say, 35%, and hit apply. There it goes. So what it will do is it will make census tracts vanish that don't match our criteria. I can see that the variable here, the watch football bowl games, goes up to 10% maximum. So perhaps I'll go into filter and add that and specify that this must be greater than 7 and apply. Does seem to be lagging a little bit. Let's go ahead and increase that to 9. We want to see some filtering. Yeah, just my luck. It does work well though. You can go in and filter. I may be needing to pump that up even more. 9.5. Oh well. So that is the mapping in Simply Analytics. Oh, now it just, oh, good gosh. You know, they know that I'm doing a webinar. You can see all of the areas are grayed out. So that's what that lag was. Let's pop this down to what I wanted to do originally and see if it will catch up fast enough. And now it looks like it went back to counties. So I'm going to specify census tracts. And it would filter. You see, we're just, I've got a little bit of a lag or delay here. It looks like it's still 9:57. So there is that feature that I did not include. I want to go ahead and show you that now. I'm going to click this new view. And what that does is bring up all of these other types of data. Ranking table is what you would use if you just want to download to Excel. Let's say I want these variables for all of these zip codes or block groups or counties in an area, and you download it right to Excel. But this ring study table is fairly effective. So what I want to do first is change the location to a specific address. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use Baylor University again. If anyone was following along with my mishaps, I might have lost you, but if you're here with me, you can type in any address you want. So I'm going to paste in the full address for Baylor University. Oh, I didn't hit location first. Let's try that again. And it identifies that this is an address. So I'm going to click address search. And what it's going to do is going to give me all of the bounding geographies that encompass that address. Could go from all of the US down to the individual census block group that surrounds that area. So it's actually going to give us a ring study of the area around not a specific address, but around the bounding block group. So I'm going to select the bounding block group. I have percent fast food and I've got the football bowl game specials. I click done. And how easy is that, right? So now I'm looking at the block group that Baylor University resides in. It gives me 1 mile, 3 mile, and 5 mile radius, comparing it to all of the US. And again, you can add as many variables as you would like. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. Hopefully we got a little bit out of this, as this is not the core GIS that the sprint from now on is going to be. But I wanted to sort of get us started by looking at some tools that we may have just lying around in our database list at our respective institutions that very easily and quickly can answer many of the GIS and mapping questions, especially in the social sciences and public health areas. The last thing that I want to mention is that we do have in the day one folder that I think everyone has access to, there is an activity for library databases with GIS capabilities. Not required, of course, by any means, but if you are interested in this topic and want to sort of explore it further throughout the day, there are 4 questions here, and it does not require you to have access to any of the databases. They have 4 fictitious reference questions. And what you would do is specify which database or databases from the 4 that we looked at. And I repeated the slide from the introduction PowerPoint that talks about their strengths and weaknesses. And then if you guys are able to make it, I'll see you at 4 o'clock this afternoon to talk through some more of this. And thanks, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Josh. All right, so I'm going to be picking up with an intro to ArcGIS Online here, but seeing that we've been going for an hour straight, I'm wondering if everybody would want to take a quick break just to come back, maybe a little re-energized in a couple minutes. Does that sound good to everyone? All right. So let's, I know we're running short on time for today, and I don't want us to go on too long with the ArcGIS intro here, since we'll be spending more time on ArcGIS tomorrow as well. But let's try to take, 5 minutes or maybe a little bit less if we can. And I will see you all back here then. All right. there as we go along. So I have a few materials that I've developed, and we have a very short amount of time to get through everything. So I will be giving a very high-level overview of ArcGIS Online. We'll take a quick look at the interface and the activities. If you have time to complete them today, should also help you get some experience with the ArcGIS Online interface and get an understanding of how ArcGIS Online works, what you can do with it, and it should help you get prepared for tomorrow's activities that we'll be doing with ArcGIS Online, when Sylvia and I will be going into some further detail about what is available in ArcGIS Online. So give it maybe another 30 seconds, see if anybody else. And if you are back on, maybe just put something in the chat or turn your video back on so I can tell if we're all back. That would be great. All right, Sylvia, glad to see you back as well. All right, well, I want to try and wrap up by 10:30 is my goal. And I don't know if everybody saw the email I sent out last night, but there is also another meeting going on right now from 10 to 11, the Dataverse Geospatial Interest Group meeting, and hoping, if you're interested that we might be able to attend that for anybody who would like to make that meeting, or at least the latter half of it. So I think we can go ahead and jump back into things. So I'm going to very quickly go through the Intro to ArcGIS Online slides that are in that folder, just to give a quick overview of what we'll be covering in the next 25 minutes or so. So I will go ahead and share my screen, and then after we do that overview, we'll actually go into ArcGIS Online, and I'm going to be moving at a pretty quick pace. So I'd probably recommend just watching the activity will help you go through all the steps that I'll be going through, and repeat the things that I'm doing with your own accounts. And maybe we will do a little bit together when we log in. I just want to make sure everybody can log into their institutional accounts. And I think everybody that's on the call today responded to our survey and indicated they have an institutional account. So hopefully we'll be able to get everybody logged in and make sure that we can complete the activity today if you have time to do that. All right, so let me share my screen. And so the first thing I'm going to talk about here is what ArcGIS Online is, and why we should focus on this today, and why it's important. Sorry, move around my Zoom toolbar here. All right, so we want to go ahead and present. All right, so this is a quick overview of everything we'll be doing. We'll be logging into our institutional accounts, using the accounts that hopefully have been set up for you with your institution. We'll be quickly navigating the user interface. We'll take a look at different settings and configurations that will give us some hints as to how our institution is managing its ArcGIS Online account, and how our actual user account is configured, which will be really important for understanding what we can do, what we can't do, which will vary from organization to organization depending on how our accounts have been set up. And it will also hopefully help you, understand if maybe you're in a situation where there are things that you want to do that you don't immediately see available to you through ArcGIS Online, that maybe you can request that from your ArcGIS Online institutional account administrator. And then we'll do a real quick demo of how we can manage content in ArcGIS Online. So we'll upload some data, we'll create some content from scratch within ArcGIS Online, and then we will create a group, and we'll cover how you can share content with a group. So like I mentioned, I really quickly want to talk about what ArcGIS Online is. It's obviously going to be a pretty significant portion of our curriculum. If you've had a chance to look over the curriculum overview for the week, something we'll be spending about a half an hour on today. We'll be spending the full day tomorrow on ArcGIS Online, and that's because it's the leading cloud GIS platform. So this whole week, this sprint is focused on cloud GIS and web GIS. And I mean, really, this is the core of that. ArcGIS Online is developed by Esri, the same company that makes ArcGIS software. So if you're familiar with ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, same company behind all of these things. That's why we see Arc in the name, or ArcGIS in the name of all of these things that they develop. It's been around for quite a while now, going on about 10 years. And use has just grown from year to year. It's becoming increasingly popular, both among businesses, among entities in the public sector, like cities and counties that use ArcGIS Online extensively. And it's also becoming very popular among researchers and academics who are using it as a tool to manage how data is shared, as well as to mostly publish data and share it with others. Make their work more available and present their findings in a way that is easy to manage. You don't have to write code to create a custom map to make your findings available in a map form at a URL that's publicly reachable online. You can use ArcGIS Online to do that. The hosting capabilities and the ease with which content can be managed make it really, really powerful. It has excellent integration with all of Esri's other products. So if you've used other ArcGIS products in the past, you'll find that it's really pretty convenient to manage content in ArcGIS Online using other software tools, particularly ArcGIS Pro, which came out about 6 years ago and has really developed along with ArcGIS Online. So there's a lot of control you have over ArcGIS Online content using ArcGIS Pro. And so it's something that we won't really have much of a chance to focus on this week, but just wanted to mention that is something that you can do if you're familiar with ArcGIS Pro software. So I just quickly also want to mention the primary uses for ArcGIS Online to give you an idea of all the different things it can do. And this is a very short summary. It can do even more than this. But we can store geospatial data in the cloud. So if you're looking to back up geospatial data, that's a way to do it. You can publish geospatial data services. So you can make data available to others so that they can pull it into maps they create. You can publish it to maps that you create. Basically, it just makes it possible to access your geospatial data over the internet without necessarily having to download it to use GIS software like ArcGIS Pro to work with it. You can create and host interactive web maps that are really easy to customize and share. Like I said, it's just so much easier than if you had to, purchase server space or hosting to build your own custom web map and write all the code and then put it on a server and then figure out how do I protect it from certain people but make it available to others. All of that is just you just click buttons in ArcGIS Online. You don't have to code anything. You don't have to worry about purchasing server space or anything like that. It makes it really easy. You can develop story maps to tell detailed geospatial stories using a variety of media. So you can basically combine interactive maps with static maps, with photos, with videos, with text to create these really immersive experiences for users. And you can also, and this is something we won't be getting to today, maybe this would be the topic for another sprint, but you can also set up maps that can be used in Collector for ArcGIS, which is a mobile app that will work on iPhone or iOS devices, Android devices, and it makes data collecting in the field just super simple. It's really nice. And so that also can be set up through ArcGIS Online. So a really powerful platform, and there's so much to cover. I mean, you could spend weeks exploring all the functionality. Obviously, we only have a day and a half during the sprint, so we'll be going pretty quickly. But if you have any questions as we're going along, please stop me and let me know. I'd be glad to answer any questions that come up. So just really quickly, what we'll be doing, and I'll demo all of this. I think that's probably the best way to do it rather than spending too much time on the slides, is we're going to log into our accounts. So I'll demo the two different ways you might do that depending on how your institution has set up your accounts. So basically there's the single sign-on way, which involves you using your university ID and credentials to log in. And the other alternative is using account credentials that are specific to ArcGIS Online. There's no connection between your ArcGIS Online credentials and your sign-on credentials for your university. And I'm assuming that everybody on our call today has their own institutional ArcGIS Online account. I think there's a few folks that have registered for the sprint that do not. I will mention that it is possible if you're in that situation, you do not have an institutional account available today for practicing. You can set up a free ArcGIS Online account. But I do want to mention that, that those accounts do have more limited functionality. So you may be able to do some of the things that we're doing today, but other functionality you will not find available through your free account if you're setting that up. All right, so we'll be quickly navigating the interface, going through the major buttons that you see at the top that are really important for figuring out, how to access different types of functionality within ArcGIS Online. This is, I think, really important for today, is figuring out how our accounts are set up and what are we, able to do based on our specific account configuration, which will probably vary slightly for all of us here. Everybody's going to find that their account is going to have, certain privileges or certain numbers of credits available to do processing work. And we'll try and figure out, what differences we have between our accounts. And I put together a little survey that we can fill out if you can complete activity number 1 for today for the Intro to ArcGIS Online activity. And I think it'll be a fun way for us to come back together this afternoon and compare what are the similarities and differences between how we're using ArcGIS Online at our respective institutions. We'll also explore uploading content. So this is also something that is covered in the first Intro to ArcGIS Online activity. You'll practice downloading a data set, uploading it to ArcGIS Online, and then the final thing we'll do is create a group, and you can share data with groups. It's a really easy way to manage who can access things that you're creating in ArcGIS Online to make sure it's not just publicly available. We can limit much in the same way that we might do with Google Drive or another cloud platform, who can access certain things that we are loading into our accounts or creating within our accounts. So that is what we'll be covering today. And so, as I mentioned, if you have any questions during my portion, feel free to unmute your mic and speak up. Might be the easiest, quickest way for us to address those things, since we're a little short on time. If you have any questions between the morning session and the afternoon session, please post those in the Sprint Slack channel that we have set up. I have other things going on today, other meetings and things spread out throughout the day, but I will try to get to those questions as soon as I can. Or if there's anybody else on the call that knows the answer to a question, please feel free to respond as well. All right, so we have 12 minutes till 10:30. So I don't know if I'm going to quite make it, but I'm going to go very fast. But this is all recorded, so hopefully we can go back to the recording and review if we need to. All right, so let me jump over to ArcGIS Online itself. So if we go to arcgis.com, that is how we access ArcGIS Online. So regardless of how your institution has set up your accounts or your organizational account, this is the gateway to all things ArcGIS Online, at least through the web interface. So what we're going to want to do is click sign in. And again, probably at this point, I'd recommend just kind of watching me and then replicating this after our session ends this morning, since we're short on time. So these are the 2 ways that we can log in, and this is really, really important. And hopefully, you've had a chance to figure this out already, as you prepared for the sprint. But if you haven't, I'll just quickly cover that you can use ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS login functionality here to log in using credentials that are specific to your ArcGIS Online organization. So they're not credentials that are tied to anything else, like your university login and password. So here, and I'll show you, I created a dummy account within our organization last night, just for testing purposes, for demonstration purposes like this. Since I have administrative privileges within our ArcGIS Online organization, but I will quickly log in using that account and show you what this process looks like. So you'll notice here that I'm not using my university credentials. My employee ID is not M. Shinsky example user. And it will let me log in. And now I'm logged into our organization. So here, with this test account that I created, I do not have administrative privileges. This is the most basic kind of normal default user setup. And this is what you see when you log in. Especially if you haven't used your account before, you haven't customized anything, it's probably gonna look very similar to this. And the experience might be a little bit different if your institution is maybe customized what things look like. Obviously you see this says University of Texas at Austin, but that's one way that you could log in. The other way, and I'll log back out just to show you what this process looks like and how it's different, is by using your university credentials. And that is completely dependent on whether your university has done the work on the back end to set all of that up. So, and I will also mention that if your university has not already done this, it makes managing accounts dramatically easier if you can use single sign-on credentials to authenticate and log into an ArcGIS Online account. So here I'll show you what that process looks like. I'm going to type UT Austin here, which is the unique identifier for our ArcGIS Online organization. So this will be different depending on what URL your institution has selected. And so this might be something you have to look up or figure out, you know, for us, right, it could have been UT Austin with no dash or University of Texas at Austin. In our case, whoever set this up originally selected UT-Austin. So that's something that you'll need to identify for your institution. But once I select that, and then it's going to ask me to basically confirm that right down here that I am wanting to authenticate with the University of Texas at Austin. And now what it's taking me to is not an ArcGIS Online site to log in, but this is actually my authentication portal through the University of Texas at Austin. So it's prompting me to sign in, and what's going to happen here when I sign in is it will be UT Austin that authenticates me and says, yes, these credentials are valid, and then it passes that information back to ArcGIS Online to allow me to get in with those credentials. And so now I'm logged in with a different account that is, you know, the administrative account. And so I will log back out, and I'm going to log back into the original one so I can show you what your experience is more likely to look like, assuming here that folks will not have the administrative capabilities for their organization. So one more time, we will sign in, and then we will quickly explore the interface and and I think we might have to leave some of the exploration to the activity, which is really detailed. I spent quite a bit of time on it, so hopefully folks don't run into many issues if you're following the instructions. But we'll try to very quickly cover the main things that you'll find here. So just going through the interface here really quickly, starting with the top left, this is what the home looks like, at least for UT Austin, very, very basic. And you know, not much going on here, just really once you're logged in, now you have access to the interface to navigate to what you're interested in. Gallery, this is something you probably won't use much, if at all. This is just going to give you an overview of content that's available to your organization if you want to browse or interested in seeing what others are doing. Map is going to allow you to basically just jump directly into a blank interactive map. What you can do is start to add data to this if you have data available to you or data in your account, and you can start to create a new map from scratch here, or you can just explore things if you don't save it. So that is what map leads to. You'll notice that the that interface, that top toolbar is still available even when you jump into certain pages. So even though we're in the map view, I can still now go to the next thing that was available in that top toolbar, which is scene. So a scene is a 3D map, is basically the simplest way to think of it. So if you're working with 3D data, you would want to go to a scene rather than a map. A map is for 2D data. This will take a second to load, but we'll see that we're immediately working in 3D, right? Looking at the globe. So again, something you might not use particularly often unless you're specifically working with 3D data that you would represent there. Notebook, this is something that you may not even have access to by default through your organization, since this is pretty new. But this allows you to create a Python notebook so you can start to write code in the ArcGIS Online interface. And Python is something we'll be talking about a bit more later in the sprint, but there is Python integrations within ArcGIS Online. So something we'll talk also a little bit more about tomorrow. Groups, this is really important. This will be a focus of our activity today. Groups can be created. So right now I could create a group, and let's say Jennifer is a member of our UT Austin organization. I could add her to this group and I could share content with her specifically. So only she and I can see it. Other members of UT Austin cannot. Alternatively, I could create content, and if I'm comfortable with everybody in our organization seeing it, I could share it with everybody, or I could share things publicly, and everybody in the world can see it if they go to the URL and I share that URL with them. So groups are really useful for collaborations where you have sensitive data that you want to only share with a specific set of others within your organization. Content, this is probably the most important button. This is really where everything happens, just about in terms of creating new things, uploading data, adding new things to ArcGIS Online, seeing everything that you have added previously, seeing data that's been shared with you. All of those things can happen through this content pane. So that's really, really important to gain some familiarity here. And this is what the activity today will help you with. You'll be clicking new item, and you will be adding a data set that you'll download from a website, and then you'll just drag that file over here. That could be a zip shape file. You could upload CSVs. You can upload a variety of different file types. But I will mention not all non-spatial data is supported. And even your spatial data needs to, in some cases, be prepared. It needs to be zipped up so that it's ready to add to ArcGIS Online. So there is, occasionally some work that you need to do for the activity today. It's basically giving you the simplest kind of possible workflow for getting new content into ArcGIS Online. But what you would do is just drag your, in this case for the activity, your zip shapefile here. It would automatically process that, and then you would see it available here. It would be listed, and actually we can do it. So this is what we'll be doing in the activity. You'll download this zip shapefile. You'll click there to drag it over. In this case, we're going to both upload the original copy of the data, and we're going to publish it as a hosted feature layer that will make it accessible to web maps, so that we can automatically load it into a map. And so we'll actually see two new content items show up here in our content pane. I'm going to quickly put in a tag. So here it's asking us to give it some metadata. And this is a data set of counties of Texas. This will take just a second to process. It's a pretty small data set, so it shouldn't take too long. Publishing the service, which will allow us to, like I mentioned, pull it into web maps or share it with others so that they can pull the data directly into a web map without having to download it. You'll see here by default, it takes me to the item description page. So this is where I can get a preview of the data. I can see more information about the data. I can view the metadata that we have about this data set. I can export it and download it back down. So a variety of things are available to you there. But if I go back to my content view, we'll see two new things listed. Here I have the shapefile, which is basically an exact copy of that zip shapefile that I uploaded. So I could re-download it, or I could share it with others so they could download it. And here is the feature layer, which if I click on that and we look in the map interface that was empty previously, we'll now be able to see a preview of this county data. So I'm just going to click Open in Map Viewer Classic. And there we go, the data loads. and we can click on things and get a preview of the attributes that we have for the counties of Texas through this data set. All right, so the final thing that I want to cover, and I see that we're already at 10:30, and so I don't want to hold you much longer. And I would also keep in mind that today is our first day, so I think we'll probably be going a little bit longer in the morning today than hopefully we will the next few days of the sprint, since we were kicking everything off and providing context and doing introductions and things like that. So I am wrapping up a bit fast, but hopefully the activity will help you get a better understanding of the ArcGIS Online interface. But like I said, if you have any questions after this morning session, please feel free to let me know. And so the final thing I want to take a look at is the things we'll be exploring in the first Intro to ArcGIS Online activity. And that principally involves going to My Settings and taking a look at some of the information that will tell you how your account is configured. So really importantly, you're going to want to, after you click on My Settings and get taken to the My Settings page, click on Credits to see how many credits you have available to your account. I will mention, depending on how your administrator at your organization has set up your ArcGIS Online account, you may not even be able to see this. So interestingly, this is not necessarily available for you to view by default, but credits are really important because they control how much you can store in ArcGIS Online and how much analysis you can really perform within the ArcGIS Online interface. So every time you, let's say you upload a massive data set that's several gigabytes in size, each month that goes by, it's going to take credits out of your account because ArcGIS Online is storing that large data set for you. They have to have server space allocated to storing that item. If you're processing data, so Josh was doing some processing a little bit earlier with his examples. If you wanted to use ArcGIS Online and the data available, the community data available through ArcGIS Online to try and figure out where you should locate a pizza place in Houston, it would charge you credits to do that type of analysis, and charging you basically for your use of that data. And so very quickly, you can burn through your credits. And so what most institutions will do is provide a limited number of credits to each user by default. And then once they use those credits up, you can request more. So if I were to use up all 1,000 credits in this account, I could contact our institutional administrator and say, can you assign more to my account? And then they would either decide yes or no, depending on whether you've if you've burned through 100,000, then maybe they're going to be a little concerned about giving you more. So you do need to be a little cautious. I will also mention that in the real world, right, if you're not at a university where the Esri is pretty generous with providing credits each year, in the workplace, if you own a business, you will be purchasing these credits, and they're pretty costly. So one thing to emphasize, especially for students who are maybe burning through these and not realizing that these things actually cost money once you graduate and have to get out there and then you're working for an employer. But this is how ArcGIS Online tracks how much you're using the platform, basically. And so the two ways you get charged primarily are through analysis like geocoding, trying to match up addresses with locations, things like that, or using data that is available through ArcGIS Online, like community data or business data, and through storing large data sets. The next thing that I'll click on here that is also really important that we'll be taking a look at in our activity today is identifying what your role is in the organization. So if you click on this little I information button here, this is going to tell you everything that you have privileges to do. So it's not telling you what you do not have privileges to do. So this is one of those things where if you don't see it listed here, you might not be aware that it's something that is possible. But one of the things that the activity will be asking you to do is check to see if your user account has the ability to geocode. And I'm guessing that maybe some of you will have that ability and some of you will not. So it'll be interesting to see just how our privileges might differ for our user accounts at our different institutions. And these are things that can be modified. If you contact your administrator and you say, I need access to this particular functionality, they might be able to assign that to you if they feel comfortable doing that. One of the other things I'll mention is ArcGIS Pro here. You can download ArcGIS Pro through this particular page. So if you don't have ArcGIS Pro installed, this is a really easy way to always get access to the latest installation files, as you can download it through this page. So those are some of the things to be aware of through my settings. And we're at 10:35, and I really don't want to spend too much more time on this today. The activity will walk you through a few additional things that are going to be useful to you. But I will just very quickly show how we can create a group, since that's one other thing that I mentioned we would do. And you can create a brand new group just by clicking the Create Group button. And this is assuming that your account has the ability to create groups, which I imagine most of your user roles will allow you to do that. But I can create this group and call it example group. This is for example. So obviously in a real scenario, right, you'd want to put in legitimate descriptive metadata for this type of group that you're creating. So in this case, I only want other members of my organization to be able to join. They have to, they can only be added to the group if I invite them to. So they can't request it and they can't add themselves, but this is something that you can customize depending on the behavior you would want for the group.
I apologize for interrupting. I'm excited by this. I want to confirm something. So you're saying that if students are, they use single sign-on and they have an ArcGIS online account through our institution, they can create groups amongst themselves without needing an administrator? Am I hearing you right?
If they have, if the default role, when they sign in and they create their own accounts, if it allows them to create groups, which you as the administrator have the ability to control whether they do or do not have that, you can allow them to create their own groups so that they can manage things amongst themselves. And I would definitely encourage that, just because otherwise, I mean, this is a really common thing to do in ArcGIS Online. And yeah, I can't even imagine if every time somebody wanted to create a group, they had to contact me as an administrator and ask for that. That would be a lot of overhead involved there.
So, Michael, let me just say something. At SMU, they don't create the groups. We go in and create the groups.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, really, it will vary from institution to institution, depending on what you're comfortable with, the size of your campus population as well, right? Smaller universities are not going to have as tough a time with managing those things for users. The other thing to mention here is that once you implement single sign-on and users can create their own accounts, at least for us at UT, we've seen adoption dramatically increase. It became so much easier for users to create their accounts, to log in and start to work with them, that very quickly now you have things that are being done much more often than they were maybe 2 years ago before we had that set up.
So with these groups, is that the way that you would advise researchers at your institution, Michael? If they're going to collaborate, they would create a group that would have a shared data source that they can work with? That's great.
Yes, so I will mention, I'm really just covering the very tip of the iceberg here in regards to groups. Groups can actually be pretty complicated, and that's something that is mentioned in the activity description. Is it will provide a link to the groups documentation, and I'd recommend if you're interested in learning more about this functionality, to really read it in detail. One of the other things that can be a little bit frustrating is administration of items. So by default, even if we created a group and shared things amongst ourselves, the default behavior is to only have others see it and view it, but not necessarily be able to edit it. So you have to enable the creation of certain types of groups to allow multiple people within a group to edit each other's data sets or documents. So yeah, it's actually a rather complicated topic, which makes sense because there's so many permissions and security things that are being implemented here. But yeah, it's very powerful as well, and it can be a great tool for collaboration. All right, so I will go ahead and save to create this group. And this is actually what I was mentioning there just a second ago, which is that items in the group will be editable by all members. That's not the default. I'm going to turn that on. This is often quite useful. And you need special permissions, though, as a user to have this button show up. So a default user might not see this option when they log in if they're a brand new user. And
at UT, Michael, while this is loading, you do have that set up as the default so that all users do see that toggle switch?
I created a different type of role that we can assign folks to if they want that permission. Yeah. So, and really, the decisions made at different institutions are going to vary just based on, a variety of factors, what administrators feel comfortable with, what your campus population is interested in or, wants to have access to, how frequently you're having to go in and do things for others. Just trying to make the work of administering the ArcGIS Online organization manageable is really important as well. But you also need to balance that with security. And all right, so we've created the group here. I can invite specific users. So here it's automatically going to pop up a list of everybody in the organization. That was one other thing that I wanted to show you here that will be, I think, really interesting for us all to do is if we click on members up here. So this is members of the group, but if I click on organization and then I click on members, I can actually see everybody else that's a member of my ArcGIS Online organization. And you can see how many other accounts there are. So I think it'll be interesting when we come back this afternoon to see, how many accounts do we have set up at our different universities? How much is ArcGIS Online being utilized? And talk about how much that might grow, right, as we move into the future. Since it's available, it's a tool that as more folks become familiar with it or aware that it exists, they'll probably find a way to make use of it in their work and in their research. And so, how do we plan for that in the libraries? And what can we do to facilitate use of ArcGIS Online? And hopefully that's something that we'll get out of this week's sprint. So that is my quick overview of ArcGIS Online. For today, we'll be talking about it a lot more tomorrow. I do quickly want to mention the two activities that I've prepared. So the first one is going to walk you through basically replicating a lot of the steps I just went through, kind of figuring out where things are at within your account and seeing specifically what your role is, what privileges you have, how many members are in your organization. These are important things to know. And what the activity will ask you to do is go to a Google form that I set up where you can fill this information in, and then when we come back in the afternoon, we can all look at our responses and see, what similarities do we notice, what differences do we notice between how ArcGIS Online is being used at our respective universities. And then there's a second activity, which if you're feeling ambitious, and these are both optional, but I'll mention that if you want to practice creating content, adding content to your account, if you haven't done that before, and creating a group to share that content with, you can follow this activity to learn how to do that. And this one is a little more advanced. It is, for some steps, directing you to the documentation. It doesn't provide very explicit, like first click this button, then that button. It's asking you to look at the documentation to figure out how to do certain things, which is really important since we're only able to cover a small amount this week. Learning to read that documentation is going to be really helpful for building your skills into the future. Yes, so those are the activities that have been prepared. And I think I covered everything that I was supposed to talk about this morning. Are there any questions before we adjourn for the morning session?
I have a question. If I don't have institutional login to ArcGIS Online, but we do have ArcGIS Pro in our computer labs, how different is it? Should I try to get institutional login to online, or should I try to do these activities logged into one of those computers that have Pro?
So if you have ArcGIS Pro set up at your institution, I'm guessing you probably do have ArcGIS Online set up as well, since the licenses for ArcGIS Pro are actually managed through ArcGIS Online. Like I said, there's a really tight integration there. So actually the first step of the activity, which I didn't mention yet, is to find out who the contact for ArcGIS Online is on your campus if you haven't done that yet. And if you notice any issues, if you're not able to complete this activity this morning, after you read through the first couple steps. I'd recommend maybe reaching out to see if they might be able to, if there's anyone that might be able to help you get an ArcGIS Online account set up. Or if there's any guide or documentation for how to create your own account, if that's available through your institution. This is really important even for us who maybe already have our accounts created. Just knowing who the designated contact is can be really important whenever you need to request new functionality. If you're not the administrator for your organization, it is probably going to come up at some point in the future where there's functionality you're going to need to request. So I hope that helps. I don't know. Do you have any other questions, or does that help?
Yeah, that helps. I did try logging in, and we do have an institutional login. It's by invitation only, so I'd have to get that. Yeah. Yeah,
and so that's really common for universities to have their accounts set up that way, where you have to request it, and basically that's the procedure if you don't yet have single sign-on authentication configured for your university. Any other questions?
I just have one more, and maybe at this point it can just be a yes, no, and not so much a how to do it. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of researchers here, faculty anyway, collaborate with those at other organizations. Is it possible for folks at Baylor and UT, for example, to collaborate as a group together, or does it have to stay institutional?
That's a great question. Just about 6 months ago, I was asked that question for the first time myself. And very recently, Esri has released new collaboration functionality. And there's actually really two different ways that could be done. Josh, I'll mention that Esri is always exploring new things and adding new functionality, and it can be tough to keep up with all of the new features that are coming out, every year. And so I was presented with that same question where a researcher here at UT was trying to collaborate with somebody at another university, and we explored using you can create a collaboration that links ArcGIS Online institutional accounts, or allows for like limited sharing of content between them. That ended up being pretty complicated, and it didn't quite work for what we wanted it to do. But then there's another new option that did work, which is you can create basically a community hub ArcGIS Online account for your institution. And this is not something we'll have much time to cover during this sprint, because it's a pretty advanced topic. But basically, you can create a whole nother ArcGIS Online organizational account for your institution. And that allows you to add members of the public that are not affiliated with your university to that account, so that if you had volunteers from the community that you wanted to contribute to something, you can share things with them. If there were researchers at another institution, they can join this community hub version of your ArcGIS Online account. The confusing thing there is that folks that are already within your ArcGIS Online account have their account set up, right? Like you do within your account. You would have to create a community hub version of your account. So you have to create a whole nother account. So now you have two ArcGIS Online accounts for your institution. So it's really cool. It does allow some unique opportunities for collaboration, but it does require a lot of setup to get it to work. Oh, go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say, what we have done at SM is just to create individual accounts for those people and just invite them to our own SMU accounts.
Yeah, that would be another way of doing it if you set up the accounts for them.
Yes.
And Josh, that question also reminded me that technically your institution might have up to 3 ArcGIS Online organizational accounts, because folks in facilities administration or whatever that department is called at your university that are managing campus operations, they too can take advantage of ArcGIS Online, but their credits are separate from the academic side credits. And so they would have to create their own ArcGIS Online organizational account that is separate from the academic ArcGIS Online organizational account. So yeah, you could have your community hub, your facilities management account, and then your academic account.
Yeah. Yes, they do have their own everything separated, which is nice.
Yeah. So yeah, basically all that to say that ArcGIS Online is a topic that you could explore in a lot of depths. There's just so much functionality there. A lot of it is going to be really helpful to a lot of different folks on your campus. And being in the libraries, right? We're there to answer questions, to help facilitate research, and having a better understanding of these tools and the functions that are ArcGIS Online can serve. Is just going to be really beneficial to our university. So hopefully, today we kickstarted everything, and we'll be able to go into more depth about this when Sylvia and I focus more on ArcGIS Online tomorrow.
Michael, can I ask another question? Did I understand it to mean that everyone in this group has an account to ArcGIS Online?
Well, based on the survey responses that we received, I think everybody that's on the call today mentioned that they do have an institutional ArcGIS Online organizational account at their university. But I don't know for the folks that are maybe registered that are not here in the morning session. There might be some folks that do not have that set up at their campus, and might need to try and create a free account to explore some of the functionality that we discussed. And I mentioned that the free account can be very different. It is much more limited in terms of what is offered.
Okay.
And actually, you made me think of one other thing in regards to free accounts. Folks at your university, if they create things in a free account, it can be difficult to transfer things between accounts. So if anybody contacts you and is interested in setting up an ArcGIS Online account, definitely let them know the recommended procedure at your university. It has caused problems in the past where certain folks did not know that ArcGIS Online was something they had access to. So they would create their own trial organization to be able to utilize ArcGIS Online functionality. This happened at another university I was at. It was a big headache to try and get that data recovered and moved over to their real institutional account that they created later. But yeah, transferring data from free accounts to institutional accounts can be a headache. And one other thing is that once your institutional account lapses, let's say a student graduates, a faculty member retires, a staff member moves to another university, that account will become inactive. And once accounts are inactive or deleted, then users will, especially if single sign-on authentication is utilized, that they would lose access to their content. If they haven't backed it up or downloaded it or managed to preserve it in some other way. So that's something we'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, well, we've gone a bit past 10:30. My apologies there. So I'm going to go ahead and try and wrap up here. As a quick reminder of how the rest of our activities today will work, we'll have until 4 p.m. to try and complete the activities, which are optional. So if you have a chance to do that, they're encouraged. But if you have any issues, you run into any roadblocks, don't worry. If you don't have a chance to complete them because you have other meetings or your schedule is packed today, also not an issue. But hopefully we can all get back together at 4 p.m. today, talk about our experiences, ask more questions, and get ready for tomorrow, where we'll be doing more with ArcGIS Online.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining our morning session.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
spending the rest of the week together.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.